Hey, what's up everybody? This is Osterberg501 and today I want to go over the open world of Diablo 4. Now Diablo 4 will be the first game in the franchise to feature a fully open world where if you wanted to, you could walk or ride from one side of the world to the complete other side without encountering a single load screen. And this will also have pretty big impacts on how the game is designed and a lot of the content and features you're going to find in the open world. So unlike previous Diablo games, Diablo 4 is a fully open world. This means you can explore any of the 5 distinct regions in any order at any time and travel seamlessly between them. Sanctuary will become a living, breathing place to explore and plunder, with introductions like monster ecologies tied to regions, a shared player world with public events, and town points of interest that act as social hubs. Diablo 4 will feel a little less lonely, though no less bleak. Now the 5 distinct regions that are going to make up the open world of Diablo 4 is Skazglen, which is home to the Druids. This verdant and rainy land is heavily forested and borders the coast. Werewolves lurk in the thick foliage, and the new monsters family, the Drowned, crowd the haunted coastlines, waiting to drag unsuspecting victims to a watery doom. Then there's Fractured Peaks, snowy and secluded. A sect of devout priests find refuge in the isolation of this high mountain range. They seek enlightenment while remaining unaware of the horrors that dwell in the dark cave complexes below. Then we have the Dry Steppes. The unforgiving, harsh environments of the Dry Steppes is home only to the hardiest of desperate souls. Be warned, the denizens of this land will do anything to survive, resorting to anything from petty banditry to savage cannibalism. Then there's Hawazar. Witches and zealots call this snake-infested swampland home. Scoring the murky depths for ancient artifacts, the unaware will quickly find themselves in dire straits. Then finally, we have Khagistan. As we've seen from previous visits, the desert shadows of Khagistan make excellent cover for a group of rising cultists. They quietly plumb abandoned ruins, seeking power to aid the return of the ancient primevals. And like mentioned, you're able to explore any of these different regions in any order you want and freely travel between all of them. And the main campaign story of this game is not going to be completely linear. Now, I'm not sure how exactly that's going to work. My guess is that there would be sections of the main story in each one of these different regions, and you can tackle those different parts of the main story in any order. And then most likely there would be a kind of through line that takes you to the end, requiring you to go to all of them at some point. Now, Diablo 4 is also going to be a shared world game, which generally means that you're going to see other players while you're just adventuring out in the open world. Now, there are some different rules to this, like specific areas are going to be main campaign specific areas, where once you complete that part of the main story of the game, that part will then be phased into a open world shared area. So you will then be able to randomly see players in that area. And with it being a shared world and being able to just see players out in the world, any events you come across or any, say, world bosses you come across and fight, you don't have to group up with other players to still fight with them. So even if you're somebody that generally wants to play the game solo, you're still going to be seeing some players around in certain areas, and you don't have to group up with them to help complete world bosses or random events that pop up. And also, all of the different dungeons throughout the world, which there's said to be over 150, are all going to be completely instant. So if you go enter any of the dungeons, you're not going to randomly see other players in there. Now, if you're grouped up with players, you guys can all go into the dungeons together, but you're not going to be seeing random other players in your dungeon runs. And specifically for the open world, you're only going to be finding certain monsters at certain areas. So for instance, you're only going to find the Drowned at the coast of Skazglen. You're not going to be seeing those type of enemies anywhere else throughout the open world. But once you get into the end game and start getting into the dungeons, those dungeons can have randomized elements, so you'll most likely be able to see all of these different monster families in that content. But when you're first exploring and going throughout the open world, you're always going to be finding different monster families in the different areas you go. And these different monster families actually have some different effects when it comes to the affixes that are going to be in Diablo 4. So for instance, if you came across enemies with the multi-shot affix, a ranged fallen enemy may now shoot 3 projectiles at you. But if you came across a shaman in a different area of the world with that multi-shot affix, that shaman could revive 3 of its friends at the same time. So affixes are going to have different effects depending on the different type of monster families that they're applied to. And most likely this would also be continuing into the dungeons and other content like that, where you'll be able to come across all of the different monster families. And then you also have world bosses, which we've gotten to see 2 of the 3 that are going to be in the game on launch. And these are just massive enemies that will spawn out in the world that you'll need quite a lot of players to actually complete. I think in some of the most recent footage we saw around 12 players facing off against one of these, and these would presumably give you a lot of loot and be this pretty big event. And in the footage of these world bosses, you can actually see that it pulls your camera back and zooms your camera out even more than normal because these enemies are so massive. So this is another thing you'll be able to come across in the open world, just these massive boss enemies that you'll need to gather up a pretty big group of players to face off against. Now, another one of the big features for the open world is something called camps. Now, camps are kind of like a story area where you have to either defeat the enemies that have taken over this camp or figure out a mystery in this area. And the objective you're trying to accomplish when at these camps is you're trying to figure out the mystery or take out all the enemies there so you can turn this area back into a settlement or city, which will then turn into a new safe zone. So once you take over one of these areas, there will then be a teleporter there. It will turn into a hub area, so you should be able to also see other players there once you've taken one of these over. There will then be more NPCs there for different vendors. This can possibly open up additional quests in that specific area, and you're essentially changing up the world a little bit by doing the objectives in these areas to turn them back into a friendly area. Now, I'm not sure the specifics of this camp system. I'm not sure if you're able to see players before you complete this area and turn it into a friendly area. If I had to guess, I'd say it'd probably work something like phasing in World of Warcraft, where if you're in a quest area, you can see anybody who's on that similar part of the quest as you, but once you complete that quest and the area has phased into the completed version, you would then only see people who have completed it as well. So for Diablo 4, that would translate into, if you haven't completed the camp yet, you can only see people who haven't completed that camp as well. And then once you complete that area, you'll be able to see all the other people who are there who have also completed it. But I'm not sure on that. It could also be that you just can't see other players until you complete that camp area and turn it into a friendly settlement. And with this big open world, you're going to want a way that allows you to travel around it a bit quicker. And that's where mounts come in. So Diablo 4 is going to have different mounts you're able to ride and also collect a bunch of different ones. Now, specifically, they've only shown a bunch of different variations of horses, different looking horses, different saddles. There's even like some undead and ghostly type horses. And they mentioned there will also be other different creatures to collect and ride around on. So in that way, I would fully expect they're trying to go something similar to how World of Warcraft mounts are, where you can just collect whatever different creatures they've already made models for and have all the different types and recolors of all of these different mounts. Now, there's also a few additional things tied onto this. So first off, you're able to attach different trophies you earn from doing different objectives throughout the world onto your different mounts. And it seems like you're actually able to attach a bunch of different things to your horse. Most likely you'll also be able to customize the armor or saddles that are on your horses. So say if you go kill a specific boss, maybe you're able to take the head of that boss and attach it to your horse and have it hanging off the side. So things of that nature is what I would expect to be able to customize your mounts with. And also, mounts actually tie into combat a little bit. So first off, if you get hit on your mount, it makes you get off of your mount, and I'm pretty sure it gives you a slow as well. But if you don't get hit, you're still able to keep riding your mount even if you, say, get put in combat when running by creatures. But also, every class is going to have their own specific dismount attack. And they've shown this in some footage. So say specifically for a sorcerer, while you're riding your mount, you can use this specific button and your sorcerer will turn into ice and launch themselves in a line, damaging everything and kind of sprouting up at the end. The rogue's dismount ability looks really cool. You jump up really high in the air and do a massive wave of arrows that does a big AoE attack. If you don't get knocked off your mount, you can actually start off a fight with a pack of enemies, having the upper hand because you use this big dismount attack that seems like it's going to be a pretty big AoE attack for most of the classes. And I would fully expect there's going to be a lot of different mounts to earn, and if it's anything like World of Warcraft, there will probably be a bunch of really rare mounts that have a really low drop chance from specific enemies or specific bosses that you're going to want to farm. And that brings us to PvP, which is going to be a part of the open world. In specific areas of the world of Diablo 4, there are going to be things called Fields of Hatred. Now, these are specific areas that once you enter, PvP is enabled. You can just fight any other players that are in that area. Now, you get a warning before you go in these areas, and you're also still able to group up with players and fight as groups in these areas. And there are a few different systems tied into these Fields of Hatred. So first off, there is a specific PvP currency that are called Shards of Hatred. Now, you don't actually have to PvP to get these. You can kill any enemies in these specific areas and earn these Shards of Hatred. You can do any of the events, you can kill other players for them. Pretty much anything you do in this area is going to give you this currency. But this currency is not a permanent currency once you first earn it. So when you die, you lose these Shards of Hatred. Now, I'm not sure if it's all of your Shards of Hatred or if it's only a portion of them. But once you die, you lose some or all of those shards. But what you can do to turn these into permanent currency is there are going to be these shrines in these Fields of Hatred, where once you have some shards, you can go to these shrines and channel on them for a long enough period of time, and it will turn those Shards of Hatred into a permanent currency that you can't lose. But when turning these shards into a permanent currency, everybody in the zone will know you're doing it. So you're going to have to defend yourself while making these shards a permanent currency. And since it's a PvP area, there will be a kind of MVP or bounty system where if some player is just destroying everybody else, they're going to get marked on the map as a bounty. And if you go kill that bounty, you get a big reward. Or if that player who is the bounty survives for a certain period of time, they also get a big reward instead. And once you've turned these Shards of Hatred into a permanent currency, there are going to be PvP specific vendors that you can buy different items with. You can buy mounts, you can buy different cosmetic pieces, you can also just straight up buy gear. Now, they specifically mentioned that this gear isn't going to be better than anything else in the game. This is just going to be another way to earn gear doing something you like doing in the game. And they also mentioned there's going to be some more PvP specific items you can get here. So I'm wondering if these are going to be maybe some type of consumables or activatable items that can help you out in these PvP specific areas. Now, that's pretty much all of the different features we know about for the open world of Diablo 4. I'm sure there are going to be some additional stuff. When the developers have been talking about the open world, they've also been talking a lot about exploration. Now, they haven't specifically mentioned anything, and I'm not sure if this is just meaning exploring to find specific dungeons or different things like that, or if there's going to be some system specifically tied into exploring and finding specific items or different things out in the open world. Not exactly sure about that, but it does seem like they are designing the open world to be an upgrade on how you would traverse other Diablo games. And they've also specifically mentioned that they don't want the open world to be something similar to, say, like open world Assassin's Creed game where there's just markers all over the map of things to go explore. It seems like the map probably isn't going to just be telling you there is something there, go look at it. It most likely isn't going to tell you any of that information, and you'll just have to go explore and find these areas for yourself. They've also mentioned that they don't want the open world to detract from you playing Diablo 4 like you've played other Diablo games. So if you just want to run around destroying big packs of enemies, you should be able to do that just like you've done it in other Diablo games. They just want this to be an upgrade and an addition to how you would traverse other Diablo games. And with this being a live service game, I fully expect the open world to be a big part of content coming into the game. I would fully expect there to be more additions to the zones, add-ons to all the zones they already have, more world bosses, more events being added in that randomly pop up. All that type of stuff is something I would fully expect them to continue to update. But that's pretty much all I want to go over for the open world of Diablo 4. So subscribe if you want to see more Diablo 4 or other videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about the open world design of Diablo 4. And thanks for watching.